Imagine a man so used to buying silence that one careless sentence in court finally makes everyone listen. The municipal courtroom wakes slowly. The faint scent of old varnished wood, the soft shuffle of coats and boots, the low murmur of people waiting to have their fines trimmed down and their mornings returned. Somewhere near the back, a local TV crew adjusts a tripod. The camera's tiny motor whirs as it tilts toward the bench. It's cold outside, and wet jackets steam faintly in the overheated room. Then the door opens, and the noise drops by half. He walks in like this is his building. Mid-50s, maybe 60, broad-shouldered under an expensive charcoal coat, silver hair precisely combed back. No rush, no uncertainty. His movements are efficient, almost mechanical, the way someone signs papers all day without ever reading the names above the signature lines. People recognize him. They don't whisper his name. They don't have to. You can feel it sweep the benches anyway. That's him. Real estate, shipping, half the downtown skyline. His money is in all of it. He takes his place at the front, not sitting so much as occupying the chair. One arm drapes over the back, as if he were in a conference room waiting for his lawyer to finish a presentation. His eyes barely move across the room. The human traffic here might as well be office furniture. The clerk reads the case in a practiced monotone. Multiple citations for parking in a handicapped zone, outstanding fines, failure to respond to prior notices. On paper, he's just another repeat offender. A few people in the audience glance at the TV camera. This is the first case this morning with a story attached. The cameraman shifts focus toward the defendant. The red tally light comes on. Judge Caprio looks down at the file, then up at the man. His voice is calm, as always. "Sir, you are here today on several parking violations. Do you understand the charges?" The man doesn't answer right away. He unlocks his phone, glances at the screen, then sets it on the table face up. A text thread is visible for a second, just long enough for the front row to catch the name of a well-known city official at the top. He doesn't bother to hide it. "Let's make it quick," he says, his tone flat, almost bored. "I control everyone in this city anyway." The words hang there, heavy and electric. Nobody laughs. No nervous chuckles, no shifting to break the tension. Even the usual coughs and chair creaks seem to stop. An older woman in the second row exhales sharply, a sound somewhere between a scoff and a prayer. Caprio doesn't raise his voice. He simply lifts his eyes, a fraction of an inch, an old Rhode Island judge looking at a man who just said out loud what too many people suspect. For a heartbeat, it feels like the whole room is holding the same thought. Did he really just say that? Near the back, the camera silently zooms in. The Tycoon glances sideways, checks another message, flicks a tiny smile at whatever name is lighting up his screen. It's the gesture of someone who has never been told no by anyone who mattered. He thinks this will be a formality. He thinks the fine is the story. But as Caprio turns back to the folder in his hands, eyes narrowing just a shade at a detail only he can see from here, it becomes clear to everyone watching. The real story is about to start. Where are you watching from? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Caprio lets the boast linger in the air, then folds his hands on the bench. "Sir," he says calmly, "for the record, tell me about yourself." The man huffs a short laugh, more air than humor. "Come on, Judge. You don't need me to explain who I am. I've been on half the front pages in this state." Caprio doesn't blink. "I'm not asking the newspapers. I'm asking you." That lands differently. A few people in the gallery lean forward. The Tycoon shifts in his chair, not used to being pressed on something so basic. "I built this city," he finally says. "Started with nothing. 80s, 90s, bad loans, bad neighborhoods, worse interest rates. I took the risks nobody else would touch. Now people live in buildings I saved from the wrecking ball." On the benches, some older listeners exchange looks. They remember those years. They know it isn't entirely untrue. He goes on, voice steady, almost rehearsed. "My father was a firefighter. Providence born and raised. Ran into burning houses while politicians argued over budgets. We grew up counting his overtime to see if we could afford groceries." For the first time, something like warmth edges into his tone. It flickers, and then goes cold again. "He died at 52, the man says. Heart gave out. The city sent a plaque." His mouth tightens. "I swore I'd never be at the mercy of anyone's decisions again. Not a chief, not a mayor, not a judge." Caprio absorbs that without comment. The room stays very still. Power simplifies things, the tycoon adds, as if explaining a business principle. You don't fight every rule. You just move them out of your way. People listen faster when they know you can make their life harder. A low murmur passes through the audience, disapproval wrapped around a grim sense of recognition. The judge glances back at the file. Earlier, you said you parked the vehicle in the disabled space. Yet in your written statement, you claimed the driver was a member of your staff. Which is it? The man hesitates. It's brief, but everyone sees it. I own the car, he says. I'm responsible for it. I didn't physically park it every time. That small crack in his story pulls at an old thread. Caprio taps a page with his pen. There's also a note here, referencing an incident in 2016. A collision near one of your properties. You remember that? For the first time, the color drains slightly from his face. His jaw flexes, his eyes harden. That case was dismissed, he says quickly. Irrelevant. Maybe legally, Caprio replies. But we're not only measuring statutes today, we're looking at patterns. A woman in the second row mutters, sounds familiar, and someone beside her quietly agrees. The tycoon leans back, forcing a smirk. Judge, with respect, fairness isn't some mystical thing. Fairness is defined by the people who can afford it. Always has been. That sentence lands like a dropped weight. Older men in work jackets shake their heads. A retired teacher in the front row exhales sharply. The officer who wrote the ticket crosses his arms, expression unreadable but tense. Caprio's gaze doesn't waver. In this room, he says evenly, fairness is not for sale. For the first time, the man doesn't have a ready answer. His world, where everything has a price, has just met a place where that currency doesn't work. And everyone can feel the collision coming. Caprio shifts the file closer, his fingertip pausing on a line most people would skim past. Sir, he says gently but with unmistakable purpose. Let's review the basics together. The tycoon's posture stiffens. I already told you. You told me something. Caprio interrupts softly. Now let's see what the record says. A faint ripple of anticipation moves through the gallery. The judge begins with a simple question. On March 8th, who was driving the vehicle? The businessman opens his mouth, hesitates, then offers, I was. Caprio lifts his eyes. But your assistant filed a statement saying she was. And the timestamp from the parking camera shows a man stepping out of the driver's door. He doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't need to. The facts do it for him. A quiet breath escapes someone in the audience. The officer who wrote the ticket shifts his weight, arms still crossed. The tycoon forces a smile, thin as tissue. Judge, you're reading too much into clerical errors. Clerical errors rarely wear tailored suits and exit luxury SUVs, Caprio replies. A few people chuckle under their breath. Quick, nervous, half choked off when the businessman glares toward the back row. The judge moves on. There's another inconsistency, he says, tapping a different page. You mentioned paying every fine promptly. Yet the city records show 6 tickets voided before processing. Do you know how that might happen? The man fumbles with his cufflink. My staff handles filings. Maybe someone overstepped. Overstepped. Caprio repeats, letting the words settle. Or someone intervened? The gallery feels the shift, something under the surface beginning to crack free. Then comes the moment when everything tightens. Caprio lifts a separate document, sealed in a protective sleeve. This vehicle, he says, the one involved in every recorded violation, it isn't registered to you. The tycoon blinks, just once. It's registered to a family foundation. Same thing. A foundation, Caprio clarifies, dedicated to providing transportation for disabled veterans. The room goes still. Even the overhead lights seem to hum quieter. A woman in the second row presses a hand to her mouth. The officer straightens. Someone whispers, You've got to be kidding. The tycoon tries to recover. It's all internal accounting, nothing improper. But Caprio isn't looking at the papers anymore. He's looking directly at the man. One more question, he says softly. You mentioned earlier a name, Mr. Grover. You said he could fix this. The businessman stiffens. That single name, spoken too casually before, hangs now like baited wire. Caprio folds his hands. Mr. Grover was under federal investigation in 2016. Details of that inquiry were sealed. Tell me, sir, how exactly did you come to know his involvement? The tycoon's face tightens, not with anger, but with calculation, like someone who realizes he stepped onto a frozen lake and hears the crack beneath his feet. Around the room, reactions multiply in silence. Raised eyebrows, sharp exhales, the nervous shifting of people who suddenly understand the gravity beneath the surface. For the first time, the man doesn't seem untouchable. And Caprio, calm as still water, says only, "Something here doesn't add up, and we're going to find out what." The moment Caprio says, "There is someone who asked to speak," the room shifts. It's subtle at first. Chairs stop creaking, the side whispers evaporate, even the air feels tighter. The courtroom door opens with a soft metallic click, and in steps a man who looks nothing like the type you'd expect to fracture a billionaire's confidence. Gray hair, thrift store jacket, folders pressed to his chest as if shielding something fragile. A former accountant, ordinary, quiet, unnoticed by the world for decades. Yet the second the tycoon sees him, his jaw locks. Something unscripted has entered the room. "Sir, please state your name," Caprio says gently. "Walter Briggs," the man replies, voice steady but frail. "I worked for Mr. Harrington for 27 years. A pulse of tension runs through the audience. Briggs clears his throat. "That vehicle registered under the Veterans Foundation. It wasn't for charity. It was a shell company. He instructed me to place several assets there so fines and inquiries would disappear." He pauses. The silence that follows is so complete one could hear the hum of the fluorescent lights. "I signed things I shouldn't have, but some lines I couldn't cross anymore." The tycoon snaps upright, the mask cracking. "Walter, sit down. You don't know what you're talking about." But the accountant doesn't sit. "I know enough," he says softly. "Including what happened in 2016, when you ordered me to destroy those records." Gasps float through the room. Someone mutters, "My God." Harrington's voice suddenly erupts, louder than before, stripped of its cultivated elegance. "You think this changes anything? I control everyone." The outburst ricochets against the wooden walls like a misfired weapon. Even the clerk freezes. For a man who built his empire on composure, this is the first public fracture, and everyone sees it. Caprio doesn't flinch. His tone stays calm, almost quiet, and yet the entire courtroom feels the weight of his next words. "Not here," he says. "Not today." The tycoon's breathing is uneven now, rage and panic wrestling behind his eyes. Briggs lowers his gaze, not triumphantly, but sorrowfully, like someone who never wanted to be here but had run out of ways to sleep at night. Caprio nods to him. "Your testimony is noted." Around the room, faces shift, not in pity or gloating, but in recognition. The illusion of untouchability has evaporated. What stands before them is just a man, cornered, exposed, human in the most uncomfortable way. The judge closes the folder with deliberate care. "Mr. Harrington," he says, "we've crossed a line. The truth is no longer a rumor. It's right here in the open." And for the first time all morning, the tycoon doesn't have a single word to throw back. Caprio lets the silence settle before speaking. "Mr. Briggs, please hand the documents to the clerk." The accountant steps forward, placing a worn envelope on the bench. Paper so aged it looks as if it has carried guilt for years. Caprio opens it slowly. The room watches every movement. Each page he lifts revealing another layer of a life built on carefully concealed shortcuts. Letters with faded headers, internal memos scribbled in hurried ink, notes authorizing transfers between charitable divisions that were anything but charitable. These records, Caprio says, represent decisions, not mistakes. He holds up one sheet, a reimbursement request marked with a signature that unmistakably matches Harrington's own handwriting. Just minutes earlier, the tycoon had insisted he didn't bother with small paperwork. A murmur ripples through the courtroom. Before the judge can continue, the issuing officer steps forward. He removes his cap, voice steady but tight. "Your Honor, the night I wrote the ticket, he tried to buy me off. Told me to spend the night thinking about my future. I reported it, but it never went anywhere." Harrington's face drains of color. The man who strode in with the confidence of someone who owned half the city suddenly looks smaller, as if the room itself is shrinking around him. Caprio's eyes shift to the tycoon, studying him, not with anger, but with a deep, quiet disappointment. "Is that true?" For a long time, Harrington says nothing. His gaze drops to the defense table. His fingertips tremble. Briggs speaks again, but gently this time. Judge, he didn't start like this. Back then, he fought hard for every deal. But somewhere along the way, he started believing he deserved shortcuts. We all paid the price for that belief. The words hit harder than any accusation. They sound like a eulogy for a man still alive. Caprio folds the documents, aligning the edges meticulously, as if restoring order piece by piece. Mr. Harrington, this court cannot investigate your empire. But the way you treat rules, your rules, my rules, the public's rules, that is relevant here. You could hear a pin drop. A woman in the second row covers her mouth. Someone exhales slowly, the sound echoing in the stillness. Harrington finally lifts his head. For the first time since he entered the courtroom, there is no arrogance, only exhaustion. I never thought any of it mattered, he mutters, almost to himself. Caprio nods once, understanding the devastating simplicity of that admission. It always mattered. You simply stopped noticing. He places the envelope aside. We now have the full picture, he says, voice calm but final. What comes next is not about power or legacy. It's about accountability. Harrington clenches his hands together, a man bracing for the first honest judgment he's faced in years. And the room waits, breathless, for what will follow. For a moment, no one moves. Caprio sits back, hands folded, studying the man before him. Really studying him, as if trying to find the person buried beneath decades of armor. Harrington, he begins gently. You've spent a lifetime convincing people you hold the strings. But real power isn't in control, it's in owning what you've done. The Tycoon opens his mouth, but only a thin breath escapes. His eyes shift toward the floor, voice barely audible. I didn't think my choices affected anyone. I told myself it was just business. The admission hangs in the air like a confession no one expected to hear. Caprio nods, not triumphant, not indignant, simply resolute. Very well. Here is my ruling. The entire courtroom leans forward. You will pay the full fines. No reductions, no negotiations. A pause. But money is not the lesson you need. Harrington's brow tightens, bracing. You will complete 200 hours of service at the Veterans Support Center. You will work where your foundation's name appears, but your presence never did. You will speak with those you claim to help. You will explain yourself. And you will listen. A collective exhale trembles through the room. Shock, approval, disbelief. Caprio continues, voice steady as a moral compass. Additionally, you will offer a public apology in this courtroom. Today, to the officer you attempted to influence, and to Mr. Briggs, who refused to sign away his conscience. The officer's jaw clenches. Briggs lowers his eyes, visibly moved. Harrington swallows hard. I understand. The words are not forced. They sound like the first honest thing he has said in years. A whisper of applause rises from the back, soft, unsure, then fades as quickly as it appeared. Not celebration. Relief. Briggs steps forward slightly, his voice gentle. He wasn't always like this. Maybe this will bring him back to himself. Harrington looks at him, and for the first time, there is something like humility in his expression, raw and unguarded. Thank you, he murmurs. Caprio shifts his gaze to the gallery, speaking to everyone and no one at once. No one controls everyone, but we all control the kind of people we choose to be. The words fall into the room with the weight of truth, settling on every listener like a quiet reminder. Harrington nods, the fight gone from his shoulders. He turns toward the officer. I'm sorry. I should have respected your job. Then toward Briggs. And I should have listened to you years ago. Neither man smiles, but both accept. As the judge closes the file, the mood in the courtroom changes. Not triumph. Not humiliation. Something cleaner. Something earned. Harrington walks toward the exit, slower than he entered, the posture of a man who finally feels the gravity of his own steps. Outside, the winter light spills through the doorway, catching the edges of his face. For the first time, he doesn't look untouchable. He looks human, and somehow, that feels like justice.